Hello, everybody. It's me, Ross, and welcome back to another edition of Meet the Opposition. This week, I'm joined by Jonty Colman, the man who covers Pompey for Hampshire Live. Head of the trip this weekend at Portman Road. Jonty, thanks for joining me, first of all. Give us the lowdown on Pompey's season so far. 7 games unbeaten, 6 wins. The last time we met, it was a 4-0 win for Town, but a lot has changed. Can you tell us what?
A lot has changed, Ross. Yeah, definitely. It feels like about 4 different seasons in one, really. It all started brilliantly. First few games, top of the league after 3 or 4 games, they've gone 3 wins and a draw, and then they started getting a couple of bad results, and around sort of between mid-September and late October, Pompey were just terrible. That Ipswich game, looking back at it on the day, it was an absolutely horrendous day for Portsmouth, but it's worked out really well. Off the back of that game, they went on a 10-game unbeaten run, and then which took them to Christmas. They then had 4 games in a row called off due to COVID cases, and that affected them because they were in brilliant form. And when they came back in January, they had lost that form, and it took them a bit of a while to get going. There was a lot of change in January. And since then, actually, they've been really, really impressive. First game in February, they lost 3-2 away at Oxford, who are obviously a team having a really good season. But if you look at that game, Pompey were 1-0 down early on, came back to 1-1, had one of their best players in Joe Morrell sent off. Very controversial in what I add. They then went 2-1 up. And then Oxford, they're such a good team. They just about got the win, very, very late on, 2 brilliant late goals. But since then, Pompey have been excellent, and 6 wins and a draw from the last 7 games, 19 points from 21, that is. So, it's really seemed that they haven't moved too far in the table, but they've cut some serious points. I think it was around 12 or 14 off the top 6. But after that Oxford defeat, they were now only 5 off, and they've got games in hand over most of the teams above them. So, yeah, a lot's changed. Cowley, he's had to tinker with formations. He's had a really small squad all season due to injuries and, not having a particularly large squad anyway to begin with. But a lot of change in January, a lot of exits. But it's more long-term thinking with them. And they've lost players because they're thinking, long-term ahead and trying to plan for the future. They kind of sacrificed. They'd rather leave themselves short, but like what they have than yeah. So form's been great recently, but you do think that a defeat is due because they can't go on in such a good run. What I will say is Pompey's a brilliant run. I think of that 7-game run they've had, 5 of them have been against bottom 10 teams. The only really, really impressive team they've beat was Oxford, and a lot of those games have come at home as well. They obviously won 3-1 away at Crewe on Tuesday night. They now have Ipswich and Plymouth away, 2 massive games. And then after that, I think it's Wickham and Bolton after that. So, 4 top 10 teams in a row. We've also got Rotherham and Wigan to play later in the season. So a lot's changed, but in the last month or so, Pompey fans have been given reason to believe again when, it wasn't that long ago where it seemed so impossible with the top 6 finish.
Yeah, it was a very interesting night at Fratton Park, seeing Town win 4-0, but also what is going on at Pompey. Of course, Paul Cook returning there. Of course, he's not now in charge. It's Kieran McKenna. Yeah. Kieran McKenna versus Danny Cowley will be very interesting indeed. Let's bring up the last Pompey 11 then against Crewe, a 3-1 win at Gresty Road. One player that is missing out on there because he's suspended, and that is your top goal scorer, Marcus Harness. But one man who's been on fire at the moment, 5 goals in his last 3 games, George Hurst, will be the one player that I'm looking at straight away. Any other names and any other changes do you reckon for this game?
I think looking at that team there, Pompey have had a really small squad, so they had to tinker with. A big concern potentially is Hayden Carter at right centre-back. They signed him on loan from Blackburn in the middle of January, and since his debut, he started every game, and he's been absolutely fantastic. I think that was the main issue Pompey had when they went to a back 3, which he started doing around October, lost it a bit, and then it's basically been in fourth every game since the end of November. But he started with his back 3. The weak point was always their right centre-back. They didn't have a natural. The right-sided ones in a back 4, they're better in like the middle. Well, Sean Raggett was playing right in a back 4. But he's better suited as the middle of a back 3. So that was their issue. They were playing Kieran Freeman, who's a wing-back there, really. And it didn't work too much. But since Carter's come in, he's so suited to that role. For someone of his size, he moves, moves really gracefully like a winger, can pass. He scored a brilliant goal from sort of 25, 30 yards against Oxford a week or 2 ago. But if he is injured, he came off late on, and it's a calf concern. We're speaking to Danny Cowie this afternoon, so we should know a bit more then. But he's a potential one could come out. Clark Robertson at left centre back, club captain. He had a long injury layoff earlier in the season, and he started the last few games. So whether he comes out, and Denver Hume's been benched for the last two. So whether Conor Ogilvie moves to left centre back from left wing back, and Hume go to wing back, that's a possibility. Or Ogilvie gets dropped, although Ogilvie was man of the match at Crewe, so he'd be very harsh to drop him. As you say, George Hurst has been absolutely rejuvenated in the past few weeks. He just looks like he's a player with such confidence. It was a big gamble from Cowie. They had 4 strikers at the start of January. Hurst was the only one who stayed, and I think at that point he'd only got 1 or 2 league goals, but he was always a handful when he wasn't scoring. Cowie backed him to do well, and he's done that. He just seems so confident. 2 really well-taken goals at Crewe, a good brace against Accrington. In both games, he's been taken off as soon as he's got 2, which selfishly he'd be a bit gutted about because he won that hat-trick, but at the same time, because of his small squad, like how he's got, he's not really got much of an option. So he's kind of having to hold him back. He knows he's got him in form in a good time, as you say, with trips to Ipswich and Plymouth coming up. And they're two massive games for Pompey. They are proper 6-pointers. This will mark whether this playoff dream is a realistic one or if it's just a pipe dream. Just looking about other changes. Midfield could be interesting. It was Joe Morrell and Louis Thompson as the two in the middle on Tuesday. Both did really well, especially Joe Morrell. I thought he was excellent. But again, they're rotating back a lot. Louis Thompson's got quite the injury history, but Cowie's managed his minutes excellently this season. Ryan Tunnicliffe was man of the match at Accrington and then got benched. So that's just the rotation policy. So it's tough to know what he'll do. Part of me thinks Morrell and Tunnicliffe. Morrell's the fitter of the 3 comfort by some distance, and they're going to lose him possibly later in the month due to internationals. So they might need to sort of bank in on him. And Thompson's played a lot of football recently. And obviously Tunnicliffe was spared. So I guess I'd say Morrell and Tunnicliffe, but it's tough to know. Team selection, we know there's definitely going to be a few changes because there are every week. But yeah, Carter's injury a concern because they haven't really got a right-sided centre-back. And this back 3 has been the best solution for them. You look at Carter, Raggett, Robertson, Ogilvie, they've all been best as centre-backs, and they've been, when they have played, they've been among Pompey's better players this season. So, yeah, tough one to know, but we expect a couple of changes even if Carter is injury-free.
Okay, then. We will show out and see. I want to quickly just mention another player in that 11. Is Tyler Walker, of course, on loan from Coventry. He's a man that Town fans don't really like very much because he always scores against Town. When he was at Lincoln City, in both the games he played, he scored him. So how's he been so far? I know he scored his first goal against Crewe on Tuesday night, but he's was without a goal in 9 games. Is he a player that Town fans think, he's just scored a goal, we may want more?
Possibly, yeah. I think the issue with Danny Cowie was the man who signed him at Lincoln, so on loan. So, he's always had faith in him. He didn't get too much time to work with him because he signed him, and then a month or 2 later, he left Lincoln himself. So, but he loved working with him. He's wanted Tyler Walker for such a long time, and they've sort of sacrificed themselves partly depth-wise to allow Walker to come in. He hasn't been getting the goals yet, but he's sort of growing into the system and slowly getting better. He had actually missed an absolute sitter just before his goal, but he did get his goal, and it did make him look confident. I think against Crewe's the most foul player, which I think, the issue I think with Walker is that when he has played this season and he hasn't been scoring, you kind of question what has he been doing in games. Whereas Hurst, when he wasn't scoring, he was always battling, he was always making himself a handful and pressing. But I think Walker's getting better. He's getting better at pressing. He's getting better at just trying to carry the ball up the pitch, and he's got that goal. And speaking to Cowie, you thought once he gets that one, that'll set him going. And especially if he's got a record of scoring against Ipswich, that might suit him. Again, with the selection policy, it's tough to know because Aidan O'Brien it's been kind of 2 or 3 with Walker, Hurst and O'Brien recently. O'Brien was benched. There's a slight hamstring concern with him, but I think he was okay because he came on for the last 20 odd minutes or so on Tuesday. But, Walker's got his goal, and considering how much Pompey have invested into him, they want to keep him going. So, yeah, if he has got an history against Ipswich, it's probably the worst time for Walker to get his first goal as far as Ipswich are concerned. But yeah, it will be interesting. But I think he's kind of needed that first goal. But 11 games to go. He's going to need a lot more of them to sort of win over the Pompey fans.
I'm sure. And well, let's talk about away form then for Pompey. Going to Portman Road is always an interesting tie when two of the big dogs of League One face each other. What can we expect from a Pompey side away from home? I can see that Pompey love to score goals, so it's going to probably be a 0-0 then. But your thoughts, what can we expect from a Danny Cowley side away from home?
It's an interesting one. Against Crewe was an interesting game because they're obviously bottom of the table. They've hardly, I think they've only had 6 wins all season. So it was interesting to see how it came at it. But despite the squad concerns, despite fitness, they ran out the traps. They went straight at it from minute one. And Hurst got the opening goal within the first 3 minutes. And they looked really, really good. They continued to press. Probably should have got a second quite early on as well. So they proper went for it. And I think they'll want to do the same against Ipswich. Cowley, he said himself, he's still hurting from that night in October, and that was 5 months ago. So he's going to want revenge for sure, especially when it's a side as big as Ipswich. These are two of the big clubs in League One. So, yeah, they haven't played away too much recently. The last 3 away games, the Oxford 3-2 defeat, as I mentioned earlier, and then I'm trying to think now. They went to Shrewsbury and won 2-1 there. They came from behind, actually, which until about a month ago, as soon as they went 1-0 down in the game, that was it. But they've gone from that to the comeback kings all of a sudden. And Crewe on Tuesday night. And that Crewe game, actually, they were there 17 days earlier, got called off an hour before kickoff due to a waterlogged pitch. It was shocking. It really, really was. But, away, last couple of games, they've looked good. But again, they've not been against the best of the sides. Until maybe the turn of the year, Pompey were arguably better away than we were at home. They weren't getting results they should be getting at home. Obviously, but we saw the 4-0 defeat to Ipswich, which would come to be the worst result of the season, but especially it being at home. They had lost 4-1 at Rotherham 3 days before that as well. So those 2 games combined were just a terrible week for the Blues. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think they'll want to impose themselves. They're a team that like to, there's certain games where they'll have a lot of possession, or they can flip it and be the exact opposite, where they don't see a lot of the ball, but when they do see the ball, it's a case of, right, what can we do with it? How purposeful can we be? And against Accrington on last Saturday, they were at home. I think they had about 35% possession, didn't have many chances, and won 4-0. So, when they're at it, they can be really at it. And I think they've become a lot more clinical recently, which, again, until about maybe 6 weeks ago, they were the exact opposite. They were creating a lot of chances, score no goals. Had it not been for this ridiculous run they've been on, they're one of the worst scorers in the league. I think only the bottom 4 had kind of got less goals than them this season, and that's ultimately been their Achilles heel. At the back, they've been a bit more leaky recently, but to be fair, they've been more attacking. So it's one of those where it's a worthy sacrifice if it means they're winning games. So, but they have got, like in Sean Raggett, they've got such a solid defender in him. He's your typical League One, kick it, lump it, win everything in the air, no nonsense, just get it sorted. Carter, again, if he's fit, will be a really, really good player. For a centre-back, he brings it out a lot. He makes a lot of forward runs and, again, very agile for someone of his size. Clark Robertson, very good at passing forward. Ogilvie, again, interesting to see, A, if he plays, and B, what role he plays, because he's been sort of converted into this makeshift wing-back recently, but it's worked in the last 2 games. So, yeah, it's tough to know exactly, but it's all about the midfield. I think it's a tough one to know what happens with Louis Thompson, because he's got in midfield. I think he's like the perfect away player. He's so powerful in midfield, but at the same time, they've got Plymouth 3 days later. They've got Panucci Kamara in midfield. He's one of the best midfielders in the league, and I think personally, if it was me, I think I'd be saving Thompson for that, because I think that would be such a good battle to watch. But again, Tunnicliffe and Morrell are 2 really, really good midfielders as well. Tunnicliffe being a bit inconsistent this season, but when he's been on it, he was a proper match winner against Accrington last week, and he's had his injury problems, but when he's been good, he's been really, really good. So, yeah, I think Ipswich, they played Portsmouth at a really good time for them earlier in the season, but last season I covered Pompey and they won both games at Ipswich. So, of course, Paul Lambert was in charge then, so it's obviously very, very different. An awful lot has changed after Portman Road. So, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's definitely going to be it's a classic 6-pointer. I think if either team win, I think they'll go on and could really make it in that top 6.
Indeed, and I'm going to put you on the spot as always. Your final note. What do you reckon then? Can Pompey get all 3 points, or is it going to be even Stevens?
I think it's going to be tough. I think a part of me wants to play safe and go for a 1-1. I just think that Ipswich are also in, they've picked up a bit under Kieran McKenna, and again, but like Pompey, Sheffield Wednesday, a few other big clubs outside the top 6, you've got a real strong case for making it in there. So, yeah, I think 1-1, but I think it's going to be a really interesting game, really entertaining game, and it's going to say a lot about both teams and their playoff credentials.
Indeed, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a very good, entertaining game at Portman Road. Jonty, thanks very much for joining me. Make sure to follow the game with us and also with Jonty at Hampshire Live if you want all things Pompey. Let's get ready for the game. Bye for now.